Does fire ever respond to a scene and then advise that a person is deceased?
Certainly.
And if fire responds, determines a person is deceased, and this is potentially a crime scene, what does fire do at that point?
Well, fire then would pick up their gear and leave without disturbing that scene as much as possible. I mean, we have gear, we spread out our gear. When we get to a patient, you know, we have monitors and drug boxes and trauma treatment boxes. So as soon as it's determined that the patient is not viable, then you would pick up that gear and leave the scene. What you don't want to do is interfere with any investigation going forward.
And even when you are working on a person, are you trying to limit impacting the scene itself to the best of your ability?
Yes, our job would be to determine if treatment is necessary and then do that treatment regardless. But yes, what I should do, what the captain or whoever that paramedic should do that has the larger picture would be to try and minimize any disturbing of the scene.
But obviously, taking care of the patient is the primary focus, even if that causes the scene to be disturbed.
Yes, ma'am.
Were you working on July 11th of 2019 around 8:30 in the morning?
Yes.
Do you recall responding to a shooting at 5531 South Four Peaks in Chandler?
Yes.
When you responded or first went to the scene, did you guys stage like we've discussed?
Yes, ma'am.
And you advised that you're being provided information from two different sources?
Yes, our primary source is Phoenix Dispatch. But yes, you are able to monitor Chandler PD as well.
Is Phoenix Dispatch 911?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So you're getting what's coming in from 911. Are they relaying information to you?
Yes.
Are things like whether or not the patient is receiving CPR something that is very relevant to you?
Yes.
In this case, did you receive any information regarding that?
Yes. We were told that CPR instruction had been given and CPR was in progress.
Does 911, in your experience in over 30 years, are they able to provide instruction for lay people who may not know how to do 911 or not know how to do CPR compressions?
Yes, they are actually certified to do that. They train and are certified to give that instruction over the phone.
So even though it's only verbal, they've been trained to how to present that to a person over the phone.
Yes.
So you are advised that CPR instructions have been given and that CPR is that compressions are being given? Yes.
Been a little while, but yes, I believe that I was told. I do know that instruction. I do remember specifically hearing that CPR in progress. I believe I remember. I would have to, but definitely the CPR instructions had been given.
Does knowing that a person has been receiving CPR impact the way you view a patient when you enter a scene?
Yes.
How?
Well, because it would make the patient more viable. If adequate CPR were given prior to our arrival, then you would hope that good CPR was given and that oxygenated blood was being pushed around the body, which would mean that make the patient more viable at that point.
When you go to a scene where you believe CPR is given, such as this one, was that one of the things, I guess, that was part of your decision-making as you are assessing this patient?
Yes.
Can you talk to us about when you entered this residence, what do you recall?
When I entered the residence, I recall thinking that the house seemed empty, like it was either being moved into or moved out of. So there was no furniture or anything. We had a clear path to where the patient was. And I remember thinking that there's very little in this room other than the patient.
Okay. Did you notice at any point some items around the patient?
The only thing I remember being around the patient was a baseball bat and a ball cap.
And do you recall at this point where those items were in relation to him?
Yes, I believe the baseball bat would have been on the patient's right and the ball cap above him somewhere in the room. I think the baseball bat was against the wall on his right.
Do you recall ever seeing a bullet near the victim?
Once we started assessing, I did see a bullet, a spent round on the floor.
So that's sort of a little bit into you're in the
Yes, ma'am.
scene.
Yes.
Wasn't something you initially recognized?
No, no.
While you're in there, was there any officers in the room with you or inside the house?
There was at least one officer still clearing the house, I believe, or at least going through the house. I only recall for sure one officer being interior.
Can you describe for us how the patient, how Charles was laying when you first observed him?
Yes, ma'am. He was laying supine. He was laying on his back. As we entered, his head was towards us, so geographically, I think north. So that's how he was laying supine.
Do you recall anything about his arms or hands, where they were?
I don't. To his sides, I don't recall, honestly.
Did you observe any injuries to Charles, to this patient?
Yes, he had evidently a gunshot wound to his center chest. Hole in the shirt and a small amount of blood.
Did you recall or notice anything about where the blood was pooling from that shot to the chest?
At that time, I did not, because we have to expose the patient, and the so he's a big guy, so he had a small amount of blood above his sternum.
I'm showing you Exhibit 3 that's previously been admitted. Does that look like?
If it adjusts a little bit, but
Okay.
you can attempt.
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Are you able to see that there?
Yes.
Kind of. Does this look like the patient that you were working on?
Yes.
And in this, do you see the blood pooling in Exhibit 3 there?
Yes.
Is that sort of what you were talking about?
Yes, here in around the collarbone. So there's a divot here. That
Would you describe this patient as a fit man?
he seemed to be, yes.
When you saw that pooling like that, did that stand out to you or seem at all impactful in your decision of whether or not CPR had been given prior to your arrival?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because had adequate CPR been given there, I would have expected more blood possibly on there, and perhaps a pool of blood under him. I didn't see any blood under him. I mean, when we first got there.
So when you guys first arrived, let's go back to sort of describing the scene. You said that you didn't notice any blood pooling under him.
I did not.
And is that something that you guys are cognizant of since you're going to have to get down and around him?
Yes, but we're more cognizant of it because it would indicate an exit wound. And obviously, the more blood there is, the more the heart was beating or CPR was being done.
Okay. So both the lack of spreading on him is one indication that kind of made you question if CPR had been given?
Yes, ma'am.
And the lack of pooling of blood underneath him was another sort of
Yes.
flag to you that maybe CPR had not been given.
And no one was doing CPR when we got there. Would have been the primary indicator to me. And I say that because if CPR were in progress by PD, if there were an officer there doing CPR, then they would have continued to do CPR until we relieved them.
If a person is shot and deceased, and you start giving them compressions, can you still push blood out of those wounds?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, at some point when fire arrives and they are assessing a patient, do they, I'm going to put up Exhibit 4 here, do you need to try to remove any garments that might be around those potential gunshot wounds?
Yes, you would expose the patient.
Why is that?
Well, because you don't know for sure how many gunshots there are. You check for exit wounds. Some gunshot wounds, some entry wounds are minimal. You wouldn't see them. You know, you could go through a shirt and not see them. So you expose the patient.
Okay. I have Exhibit 4 up here from body cam from a officer that's previously been admitted. Do you recognize who these people are and where this is?
Yes, ma'am.
And is this you?
It is.
So in this case, at some point, was Charles's shirt cut in any way to allow access to those gunshot wounds?
That would be the norm. Is at this point they would be cutting his shirt.
Do you recall from this scene how many gunshot wounds you observed to the front of Mr. Vallow?
I believe 2.
Now, when you guys first arrived on scene, do you check the pulse? Like, what do you do when you first get there?
Yes, you would check for pulses, carotid pulse, and obvious signs of life breathing, so chest rise and fall, as you are walking up to a patient.
So in this case, for Charles Vallow, did you guys find a pulse?
No, ma'am.
Did you notice him breathing?
No.
Do you do any other assessments before you start compressions?
No.
So if he's not breathing and you don't see that he has a pulse, why begin CPR? Why start compressions?
Because you don't know how long he has not been breathing or not had a pulse.
Okay.
He could have just stopped those things moments before we got there, which would make him a viable candidate, or a viable patient, rather.
And does, again, the fact that you believed CPR had been performed prior to you arriving also play into your decision to see if he's viable?
Yes.
As other officers are doing compressions, what are you doing there?
So I am charting. So I am, in this particular case, I was running the call. So I'm going down a checklist, gathering information, getting listening to what they're telling me, and having them, I'm directing them throughout the call.
Okay. So at some point, are compressions stopped to assess the patient in other ways?
Yes, after a heart monitor is on.
Okay. And so are compressions able to be performed while someone else is getting the heart monitor ready?
Yes, compressions continue throughout until you stop compressions to check for pulses.
Okay. Do you ever want to check a patient who you see have gunshot wounds, such as Mr. Vallow here, to see if there's exit wounds?
Yes, ma'am, immediately. So they would have cut his shirt, taken his shirt off, rolled him, checked for exit wounds, and then rolled him back and continued compressions.
In this case, are you documenting your observations and others about what you observed when he was rolled?
Yes.
So when he's rolled, you're looking at his back?
Back, right, from the back of the head to the back of the feet.
Okay. So he's completely rolled over so that you can see his back?
Yes.
Did you notice anything about Mr. Vallow's back that may have indicated he'd been there for significantly longer than you originally thought?
He did have lividity. So there was modeling, skin modeling and lividity. Once the shirt comes off, then you could see modeling on the skin, and lividity had begun to form.
Can you tell us what modeling means?
Modeling is sort of a patchy looking skin caused from hypoxia or not enough oxygen getting to the skin. I mean, you can have mottled skin for different reasons, but in this case, it would be from his heart not beating.
Okay. And then you said lividity. What does
Yes,
that
ma'am.
mean?
So lividity is the pooling of blood, and that takes longer, much longer. So the blood will begin to leave the tissues and gravity drain to the lowest part of the body.
So when the blood isn't being circulated by either CPR or the heart, the blood just starts to pool there.
Yes.
And so you noticed that as well when he was rolled?
Yes.
Did you notice any exit wounds?
I did notice at least one exit wound, yes.
After you looked at his back, do you recall, I guess, when in this process you checked his heart monitor, when that was done?
I do not. This all happens simultaneously. You asked what these different people are doing. They're doing all of those things simultaneously. So the patient is exposed, CPR has begun, and the evaluation, the rest of the evaluation is happening. So timeline, it's on the heart monitor, I'm sure, but a lot of it happens simultaneously. That answer the question? You asked that again? I'm sorry.
I believe so. Do you recall what the heart monitor results were?
Asystole. No electrical rhythm in the heart. Flat line for.
Do you ever look at a patient's pupils?
Yes, ma'am. Always.
What's that for?
Because if it's just a brain function. If you shine light on pupils, they react. When the brain stops to function, hypoxia sets in. The pupils will dilate and remain fixed, so they won't change. They're non-reactive to light.
What did you see with Mr. Vallow?
They were fixed and non-reactive.
So we heard about the pooling of the blood on Mr. Vallow when you first arrived. As CPR was being done, did you notice any blood being pushed out of his body?
A little bit more. Again, he is on his back. Exit wound was in his back, but yes, the we increase the amount of blood under the patient by doing CPR.
When you first arrived, did you notice any active bleeding?
No, ma'am.
What's the relevance of no active bleeding?
No heartbeat.
Were you advised of Scott Cowden's information about when he started CPR, hearing the crunch, or feeling, I guess, the crunch of him performing CPR?
Was I advised of it?
Yeah, did he let you know that?
No, but that would be expected.
And is that expected if CPR hadn't been performed?
No, not adequately. Again, big guy, so that the sternum will, the cartilage holding the sternum to the ribs breaks. It gives way, so, and that actually makes CPR much easier.
In this case, you came in, he wasn't breathing, he was pulseless, his pupils were dilated, the heart monitor said there was no activity, correct? Yes. When you looked at his back, you noticed both mottling, which meant that the blood wasn't moving through his body?
Yes, and modeling was on the front as well.
Okay.
So as that blood pools, so it leaves the tissue, you know, that's gonna hasten the modeling part of it.
So you noticed that when the shirt was then cut and
Yes.
he was exposed,
Yes.
as well as when he was rolled.
Yes,
And then you also noticed on the back the lividity of the blood pooling there.
yes,
When you, I guess, obtained all of that information, did you end life-saving measures?
yes.
Who decides to end life-saving measures?
I do, as well as the rest of the crew. So Scott Cowden is also a paramedic, and he concurred. So then we call that in, and we cease life-saving function, or attempts rather.
When you cease life-saving measures at a scene where someone's been shot and is now deceased at the scene, do you leave sort of any attached medical devices with him?
Well, as little as possible. So what would have been left on him would have been defibrillator pads, probably EKG electrodes, and probably a CPR puck.
Now, when you arrived on scene or when you were exiting, did you ever notice any male outside that might have been with some police officers?
Oh, a person?
Yeah.
Yes. One person, one male.
And did you notice him when you arrived or when you left?
When I arrived, again, my job in particular is to kind of get a larger overview of the scene. So I did notice a person talking with PD.
And when you observed this person, did you notice anything that he appeared to be injured in any way?
No.
So no obvious injuries to you?
No.
If you had been asked to treat him, would you have?
Of course.
Did you see that same person outside when you left?
Yes.
And when you left, did you observe anything about him again that he appeared to be injured in any way?
No.
Did you ever see a female and a female teenager at the scene?
Yes.
Where did you see them?
They were across the street from the house we were at.
Do you see that person in the courtroom today?
I see the adult, yes.
Can you point her out and let us know what she's wearing?
Dark blazer at the defendant's table. Dark clothes, I'm not sure what it is.
Okay. State will ask the Record to reflect the witnesses identified the defendant.
Mitchell?
Did you overhear her talking or saying anything?
I did overhear her talking with the police officers, or someone said something about not getting invited to a pool party because of the commotion at the house or something, so.
What? Did you have any formal interaction with her?
No.
When you sort of completed and left this scene, looking back and assessing it based upon your training, your experience, what you observed, and what was done to Mr. Vallow at the scene, would you agree that Charles Vallow was dead before you entered the house?
Yes.
Based upon your training, your experience, what you observed, and what was done to Mr. Vallow, would you agree that it was highly unlikely that anyone had performed CPR on Charles Vallow prior to fire arriving?
Yes.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
All right, Cross.
Captain Keller,
Yes.
you were first on the scene?
The police department was first, but yes, we were the first fire unit.
First fire on the scene. And can you explain to us what staging is exactly? I'm not really sure.
Sure. Staging, when there is some violent incident, the fire department, the firefighters don't have protective equipment for that sort of a scene. So we will go to a place where, close to whatever the dispatched address is, that we would be a place of safety, but close, so that as soon as the scene is made safe by the police department, then we would enter into the scene.
So that would be like a couple houses away, or?
Could be a couple
Really?
houses, could be behind cover. In this case, it was gunshot was the call, so you want to make sure that you are a little ways away, you know,
Okay,
in case there was more gunshots.
right. So you parked somewhere on the street, but a couple houses down from the house, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then part of that staging is you stay there until you get the all clear?
Yes, until the police department says that it's safe to enter the scene.
Okay. And you were wearing body cam that day?
No, we don't wear body
Oh,
cameras.
you don't wear body cam? Okay. You were just that was a picture from you on the body cam?
On
On
one of the
someone
police
else's
officers,
body cam?
yes.
Okay. Okay. Do you use any instruments to obtain current body temperature? Do you guys have an instrument for that?
No.
No? Would that help you give a more approximate time of calling a time of death?
It wouldn't help me. I'm not trained to do that, so we don't have that. It's not within our scope of practice to determine that.
It's not part of paramedics training?
No.
Okay. You explained the modeling being patchy looking skin
Yes.
because of no oxygen to the skin. Is that correct?
Decreased, yes.
And so will that continue to increase? I don't really understand. Would you say modeling is complete or in progress? How does that work?
I would say in progress. As less and less tissue had oxygenation, I would say it continues to model.
So would you say it was in early progress or late progress? How would you estimate that?
I could not say early or late, just modeling.
That modeling was present
Yes, yes.
at that point. So how long would it take for modeling to become present? That's kind of my question.
I don't know how long.
So it could be like a,
Different for different people, I suppose.
so it could be a minute? 5 minutes?
He's already indicated.
Hold on. Rephrase the question, I'll allow it, but make sure you let him answer before you ask your next question.
Okay. So it could be just a few minutes, possibly?
Possibly. I don't know.
Okay. And then lividity, you explained as a pooling of blood. The blood leaves the tissues and goes to the bottom. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay. And you saw that as well?
yes.
And in your estimation, would that have happened soon? You know what I'm, oh, that's not a good question. In your estimation, that had begun?
Yes.
And was it advancing how far?
He had lividity on the back of his torso,
So does lividity,
backs of his arms.
does lividity start immediately after the heart stops? Is that what you were saying?
I suppose it does.
Okay. And if you were on any kind of medication, would that affect that as well?
I couldn't say.
And what time of death did you document? You were making the document, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And what time of death did you document?
I did not put time of death, but I put a time of treatment being ceased, and I don't recall what that time was. It's on that report.
And you had stated that you were listening to dispatch on the radio, is that correct?
Yes.
So were you listening to the actual 911 operator speaking?
No, whoever is calling, if you call on the phone to a 911 operator, they would give that information to a dispatcher who would then dispatch a call with the pertinent information.
Okay, so you were getting kind of updates as it went along?
No, you get the initial call, and then if it were pertinent for us, like the scene is secure, PD says the scene is secure, go in, then we would get that. PD would call dispatch, and dispatch would then call us.
Okay, so were you aware at all that they had asked him to come outside?
No,
Okay. You just saw that he was outside, but you didn't know that the 911 operator had told him to come outside, is that correct?
I did not know who he was or how he was involved in it.
Okay.
We arrived.
So on those dispatch updates, it wasn't saying like shooter is in-house or shooter is outside or anything like that? Okay, that wouldn't be.
Not to us.
That's what I'm saying.
That might be to the police department, but that's not something we would hear.
Okay. In this case, Captain Keller, do you know for a fact that CPR had not been given?
I do not know for a fact.
And do you know for a fact that CPR had been given?
I know for a fact that we gave CPR.
Prior to your coming in?
No.
No further questions?
All right, redirect.
Which do you see first, modeling or lividity? When the heart stops and the blood is no longer pumping?
Modeling.
Okay.
I would expect to see modeling first.
And you told us, I think on direct, that lividity is something that you see much later.
Yes. I would expect that, yes.
Have you treated patients before within a few minutes of their heart stopping?
Yes.
Do you see lividity in those people?
No.
Do you see modeling in those people?
No. You see skin conditions change in those people, gray or cooling. moisture, but not modeling or lividity.
So you're not here to tell us how long it takes for those to form, right?
I don't know.
All you can tell us is that it's something that you see in patients who are deceased
Yes,
and have been deceased long enough, whatever time period that is, for that to happen.
right. It is an indication of the patient no longer being a viable patient.
And that was one of the things that you noted and used in determining to end any life-saving measures?
Yes,
Now, is the only way to know if CPR has been given to be there with the person watching them?
no.
What else can tell you that CPR was given to a patient?
Well, PD on scene arriving would witness, the best way would be witness CPR.
That's the best way. Is there any other ways?
Well, yes. Again, you would have an indentation in the chest. The sternum would likely be have been cracked loose from the rib cage, and there would be, in the case of trauma, increased bleeding. You do CPR or CCR sometimes when there's not trauma, cardiac.
In this case, were other indicators the blood that was pooling only at the neck and not spread out further?
Yes,
The lack of pooling underneath the victim?
yes, and the mechanical action of doing compressions with a gunshot wound right there would have spread blood in that area as well. It wouldn't just have gone where gravity is.
So where you saw the blood pooling was where gravity, a low spot.
That was my interpretation of it, yes.
And you did not observe spread blood across his chest.
No.
Would ongoing CPR movement of the blood through the body have also limited the modeling you may have seen?
Perhaps.
Ultimately, is it your opinion that it is unlikely that CPR was given to this patient prior to fire arriving?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no other questions.